Hi, it's Jane, and I am knitting today, but I also went by the Dollar Tree because I needed a couple things. And so I thought I would show you, a couple of things I got just because. Why not? Shopping. One of the first things I got, and if you know me, you know I love Minions. I did get this little bag, $1.25. And it's pretty good depth for a bag, you know. I got this because I have Bible study that I go to, and I needed another bag. I like to make my Bible studies separate depending on the bag I'm using them for. You know what I mean? I know, kind of strange. But that way, when I know I'm going to this Bible study, I'm picking up this bag. When I'm going to that, I'm picking up the other bag. I know. But anyway, so I got this for that Bible study. And it's basically, we're doing a Bible study on James. So that bag I'll use for that. I needed another notebook because one of my Sunday school, they're doing a different set of Sunday school classes, education. So I wanted to have a notebook for that. I'd finally filled the one that I had before, so it had to be changed out. Picked up some more of the hair ties so I could make some more hair ties. Needed some index cards that were colored for a reason, so did pick up some colored. And these are blue, pink, kind of a turquoise color, and yellow index cards. And while I was in there, I was walking through and saw this. Like, I think I'll give it a try, even if it is Dollar Tree. It's a diamond painting coaster. So, did pick that up. And I picked up a couple of different colors. A couple of these I've done before. You know, like the yellow and the salmon. And then I think this is turquoise, aqua. Turquoise, aqua, same thing. But I picked up this color because I've never seen this in my Dollar Tree before. And it's called Oyster. Peach, oyster, Caucasian. Get the drift. But I do like using that yarn for the hair ties just because they come out really nice. So I'm back to knitting on my baby sweater. Do need to get my counter. And the pattern out. Now, where's the counter? I have a feeling it's up here on my desk. Hidden. And there it is. Because you do 20 rows before you switch to smaller needle size. So, that's where I'm at on this. And I'm on the sleeves right now. And they tell you on the sleeves to use straight needles. I've done straight needles. I've also done just using my 16-inch circular. Those work fine too. You could do either or. It's just I did not have my straight needles with me when I started this section. So just decided to put them on the circulars. But I'm kind of curious what everybody else is working on today. And I'll be working on the baby blanket also in between finishing up this. I'm hoping to be able to get this done by Tuesday night. Baby sweater. And then I can actually just start working on the baby blanket that goes with it. I think that I'm just going to do a granny square, you know, roughly the size of a baby blanket in a square. But yeah, that's what I'm planning here. I had seen, I think in one of the premiere ads came to the email about using the, I think it's Chunky Bloom, and to make a vest. And the vest was awful pretty, so I'm like, I think I have some Chunky Bloom in there still. I think. I don't think I've used it. I know I had some regular bloom, and I had used it. But I don't think I have used the Chunky Bloom. So, anyway, that's the plan. Pull that out and possibly do a vest. It's a knitted project. Let me finish this row and I'll talk to you about the Escapade poncho and that cross stitch. Because I know I talked to you before about it, that it's a little different than any cross stitch I've seen before. And so you kind of really have to pay attention to the directions, and there's a reason why. And I will read you that reason in just a second. So, let me grab that. Did go to look at the tutorial, and it is it's just a picture tutorial. It's not a video showing you how she did it. And basically what it is this stitch here, and this is the X stitch that she has you doing. She said, how often do you find a great design on Pinterest? Can't find the pattern but have some sort of stitch or drawn chart? The X stitch is one of those drawn tutorials she stumbled across that has been a low-key obsession for her. She likes the height of the stitch, and it's easy to get into the rhythm with all of the loops working across a row. In being true to me, she had to tweak it a bit and add a treble stitch between each X for a different look. So that is the difference on this poncho and that stitch. She did tweak it a little bit. The pictures do make it a little bit easier to understand. And this is a pattern at creationsbycourtney.com. And she has the tutorial there. She also has a lot of patterns. She does have some free ones. But this, I'm pretty sure I purchased this off of Etsy. Her Etsy shop or Shopify or something like that. I can't remember exactly. But she does give you permission to actually sell on Etsy if you want to. So, you know, there's that. You could always do that and go on your merry way, right? But it just looks like it's a very easy pattern, but you just got to, I guess, figure out what she means with doing all those extra loops and whatnot. But like I said, the picture tutorial is very helpful. I wish she had done a video, but just because videos are easier, you can do it while you're watching it. You know, it's hard to do it, get into the rhythm by using a picture tutorial that you have to flip pages on. That's all I'm saying. So, yeah. But it, you know, like I said, it's an interesting stitch. I like the way the poncho looks, so I'm going to give it a shot. That is one of my other crochet projects. Because, you know, I can't be monogamous. I don't know what it is about crochet and knit that I need to have more than one project going at a time. But it's just the way it rolls with me, so. There are times you just say, okay, fine, we're worrying about it and do it as is. So. And that is something that I think comes to each of us a little differently than others. So. But that is the plan for working on that. And my next plans as far as knitting and crochet go. Okay. Need to pause you a moment because got to change the battery. Okay. One more row before we start the ribbing on the sleeve and then bind off. So it's going pretty good, if you ask me. I'm always thrilled to see it moving along. I think that's why I like this sweater pattern, because it goes by pretty fast. But yeah. I had started to go out and to blow torch the driveway, but the sun has been out there today. Some of that has dissipated, evaporated, so I don't need to do that anymore. Plus, I had a neighbor come up and kind of grate the ice, I guess is what he calls it. So it's breaking up much faster. Which, you know, in a way I was sort of glad, but at the same time not. Because I was like, that might make a fun part of a video for you guys to see that, right? But, yeah, not in the cards. All right. So now that I'm ready to start the ribbing, you have to change to a smaller needle size. And it's a 2x2 ribbing. No big deal. But it's just getting there, right? Getting it across and getting it started. And I think there's only 4 rows of ribbing. So. And I'd gone in here, when I changed the battery, I decided to make a run to the bathroom. And when I did that, I noticed the cats weren't in the bedroom. They're not in the living room. So when my second thought was, where are the cats at? So I go to see where they're at. And Izzy's sleeping in the chair in front of the fireplace in the craft room. Ronan is back there in the cat tree house, napping in one of those spots, which I'm glad. I mean, that means that somebody's using it, right? Instead of it just sitting there doing nothing. Haven't quite figured out, though, how to get Izzy to use the sisal rope, because there's quite a few ramps on there with the sisal rope that she could strengthen her little claws on, if she were so willing. She's not so willing, so that's kind of frustrating, but, cats are cats. What are you going to do? Just deal with what you got. Worry about it later. So, anyway, just going to move on to doing the best I can with those cats. Get them trained. Maybe eventually, they'll use it. And there's a part of me that wonders if the reason they won't use it is because the first scratching, it's just a little tower that I got for them when they were kittens, is carpet. It has carpet around it. Doesn't have the sisal. Now, the only other thing that I've purchased that found was the little cardboard inserts that kind of react like the sisal. And they loved it. They tore it to pieces. And didn't see any more of those in my area to purchase, so didn't get any. So now I'm looking for one of the little small cat scratchers that has the sisal rope on it, because I think that'll get them to start using it more often. If it's a standalone, as instead of being part of a tree. Anyway, that's my hope with them, to getting them to using that, so that they'll quit using the furniture. And it put some of those furniture protectors on some of the stuff. Like I said, the stool that you purchase, that's basically just for you to hide things in. I think they're called ottomans. I'd picked up a couple of those. And the one, they shredded completely. And I hadn't realized that they were doing it because it was off across the room. And I wasn't really paying attention much. And when I finally caught them at it, during the daylight hours, the one side was pretty much shredded up. So I had to move off, had to get rid of that one because it was just falling apart the way they had shredded it. This new one is the one that I put on the, it's a protector that goes around the base. You peel off it's adhesive, and you peel off the backing and then apply it to it. They haven't bothered that since. So I'm kind of curious what they've moved on to. Because they're cats. That's what they do. So I may never know what they are up to, and if they have, moved on to something else, or if they're continuing to do it on something that I don't know of. I do know that they use the old, Ronan is real bad about using the old dresser that I had that's already torn up. It's got quite a few dings and nicks in it, but it can still be used as a dresser, so I use it to put extra things in, like the quilts and blankets like that I don't use at the moment. At one point, I was using it to put the different things that I was making for Operation Christmas Child in it. And then kind of got away from that, so now it's used for storage. Now, this is the last row of this before I start the bind off. And then the sleeve will almost be finished. And I'll slip stitch it to the top and move across the back of the sweater to start the next sleeve, which I think will make things a whole lot easier. Although I do think that I need to find a longer cord instead of using this one shorter cord for the body when I'm first starting out with the sweater. Because once you get to that sweater, this needle is pretty full. So I need a longer cord for it. Yeah, I could use it on straight needles, but I'm not gonna. I know me. And I do know for a lot of folks with this sweater, it just tells you to bind off. Generally, even when it's a 2x2 pattern, I'll just bind off knitwise. And that's just me. A lot of folks will, bind off in the pattern. And that's fine if you want to do it that way. I just find it easier to do the whole thing knitwise. Basically, because when you're binding off, does it really make a difference in the way it looks? All right, folks, I probably need to answer that. I've gotten several messages. Might be of my son, might be something. Who knows? This family. Never know. My son in Raleigh got 6 inches of snow yesterday and last night. And he said that he could see how if somebody had parked in his space or shoveled snow where he cleaned off his driveway and everything, he'd be ready to have a little bit of road rage on him. Or if the plows had come through and plowed across the end of his driveway. He goes, now I see what you were talking about when you said they had almost 2 feet where they had plowed across the entrance of the driveway off the street. And then I asked him if he'd been watching any of the snow parking wars on TikTok. He said no. I said you should go watch them because some of them are absolutely hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. And, I can understand how someone would be angry if they had cleaned out a parking spot, cleaned off their car, cleaned off the snow, and really cleaned the spot, and come back and somebody else is in the spot. Yeah, I could see that. I could see exactly why people would get so upset and so angry about it. Today at church, I think I told you before, I'm on the greeter ministry, and they're changing it to the connection team. And they'd made this they didn't really explain what they were doing, but basically that we were going to be, instead of the greeting team, we would now become the connections team. And there was going to be parking, ushering, some other things. And it was like, okay, does this mean I'm going to have to park? Because seriously, you don't want me helping to park cars, you know? And I'm like, I don't know how well that's going to work because, quite honestly, people are stubborn. And they were talking about the whole reason for it being mostly safety issues because the church has grown so much and our parking spaces are getting kind of tight. And really, to be honest, with the property that the church owns, they could add more parking spaces. They could. I don't know that they're going to, but they could. But one of the things that I think is interesting with this whole thing with the parking stuff is that they're now telling you that the plan is to start directing people to parking spaces. And I'm like, you know, we are all creatures of habit. Normally, when we go into the church, we sit in a certain seat, certain pew, certain section, and we don't want to change that. So now we're going to have ushers that are going to ask you to move so people can be moved into those spaces. And, it might be a visitor, might be someone's new to the area, someone new to the church, looking for a church and that kind of stuff. And, I got no problem with that, to be honest. But, and I've told you, I take someone to church and she doesn't like to sit up front. And some of the ushers' responsibility is to try to get people to move up front so they can leave the back seats for the visitors. And I'm not real sure how people are going to react to that if you're asking them to move and sit up front. And we were kind of laughing about some of the things that they're changing within the way that they want us to greet and meet and those kind of things. Some of it, I've wondered for years why we don't do it. And one of those is that we'll be expected to arrive an hour early before service, mainly for us, one, to get to know the other members of the team. I mean, I know most of them, but I don't know all of them. But the other thing is to take a moment to pray before we start doing. And I always wondered why we did not do that to begin with. That just seems like a good idea. You know what I mean? But one of the things that they were talking about with everything that is going on lately within the world and all this nonsense, and yes, a lot of this is a result of what happened in Minneapolis with that church service. And we have some rather how do I put this? some rather radical people in our neighborhood lately who are, shall we say, rabid about this whole thing with ICE and against ICE. And our church, the elders, through a lot of prayer and whatnot, have decided from now on, doors to the church will be locked. That there will have to be a greeter at the door to open those doors to let you into the church, which is basically a safety feature. And yes, we know there will be strangers that you'll be opening the doors to, but the whole idea is to greet, to talk to them, get to know them a little bit before they come in to the sanctuary. Sanctuary doors are locked, which I told you before, that's never not been an issue. But there will be a floater that is outside that if someone leaves the sanctuary, like to go to the bathroom, that they will be able to open the door for them. Get back into the sanctuary. It's a good idea. Safety protocols, Sometimes you have to do that. But and that's just something that we're implementing all the way around. But I often wonder why we didn't pray beforehand. And they're actually going to do a little bit more training. I had talked to them in the past because their training was, you want to be a greeter? Okay. Here's the schedule for you for the next 3 months. But, nothing, no training, no, this is how we expect you to do this as body of Christ, as, the way we want you to welcome people, those kind of things. So now there is definitely a more definitive answer for a lot of folks, which is much needed, if you ask me. I mean, I've often thought that we should have had something like that put in place for training. So they'll be, we'll be doing that, and learning about those new ways and new things that they want to do. They are talking about also having floaters, which were always called roamers before, that if someone, instead of pointing them to where the coffee bar and the donuts and that kind of stuff is, that you actually take them there. So that's what the floater will be there for, to help with that. Or you as a greeter at worst will do that. So, yeah, just interesting changes, And then as an usher, you're, like I said, you'll be taking people up to the front of the church, towards the front. Not necessarily someone who's visiting or who is new to the church and not real sure, but definitely those that been longtime members. And that's going to be really difficult for some of these people. It absolutely is. Because we have quite a few that are not as willing, I guess is what I would say. Not as willing to do that. So, like I said, it should be interesting to see how that works and get that across. I think I needed to knit this. Yep, I did need to knit it on. And I didn't knit it on there. Okay, well that just means they're going to go back onto the needle. Right? Sometimes you do something stupid. I don't want them going on back that way. Oh my goodness. Talk about not paying attention. All right, let's get this going back onto the other needle the right way. And then I can knit across to it. But anyway, those are some things that we were talking about with our meeting beforehand. And like I said, it should be an interesting thing. And I'm glad to hear that I'm not going to have to do parking. Because my fears are, I would be one telling them to back up, and because that's part of the parking is to be able, so that if they can't find a parking space, that you can guide them to one, and so that they're not doing a lot of backing up, driving around in circles, and possibly causing a little bit of a fender bender or something like that. So I'm glad to learn that I don't have to do that. I could sign up for that team, but I'm not going to. That is not my purview. And then they kind of gave us information that the parking team would be different from the safety team, and that their walkie-talkies would be absolutely different. So if you're on the parking team, you need to pick up a walkie-talkie for the team. Sorry about that. Again, answering my son. He's asking if I have one of the Snow Joes. I said, yeah, it's kind of like that. Only thing is the battery only lasts about 30 minutes, so personally I need to get another battery or two with a charger so that they can be charged, two can be charged up, ready to go at once, and you know what I mean? Or what I've actually thought is I need to get two more so that I can have two backup already charged, as well as the one that I'm using at the moment, because it only lasts about 30 minutes. And then I could set that to charge when it runs out, come in, get a new battery, get a drink, do the potty break, whatever, and go back out. So, and I'm kind of curious why he would think he even needs to get one, Because honestly, Raleigh, North Carolina does not normally get that much snow. This year has been very different for everybody all the way around, you know? So, okay. Now I'm ready to start on this sleeve and start a whole new round of getting 20 rows done. Stockinette stitch. And the first row of the 20 rows is always the purl row. So, that's what I'm doing right now. Starting that first row. Let's see, news-wise, there's a woman in Georgia. I think her name is Suzanne for Georgia on Instagram. She's a Democrat running for a state house seat. And boy, does she have some fascist ideas if she gets elected that needs to happen in Georgia. She wants that anyone that voted for Trump, that they have no internet access for 4 years. Also, let's see, what was the other thing? They're not allowed to post anything anywhere. Well, if you took away their internet, and I'm not sure how you do that, because they could go to a coffee shop and use their internet. So, some of her thoughts and ideas are extremely fascist in nature. So, those of you in Georgia, if she's running in your district, run. Because if she'll use it against Republicans or anybody that voted for Trump or somebody she doesn't like, what makes you think they won't do it all the time? And she's also using the thing that she thinks the FBI, because she is using misinformation, she's using one of the examples out of the Epstein files, where the FBI received the tip lines, some of the tips on those, and a lot of these people were goofy people calling in August 2020, which the Biden administration, DOJ, is the one that actually investigated all of them and found that either they couldn't contact the person to speak again with them, they gave a false number, telephone number, or information to reach them. They had offered to send proof, but they never did. Or in the case of a couple of them, they found that they actually had been referred for psychiatric care 2 or 3 times, had some mental break issues, those kind of things. But this one thing that she was talking about was she wanted the FBI to go to his to the golf course in Florida to actually do some sonar or radar penetrating to check over the golf course for dead bodies. Well, that was a tip that was called in August 22, 2020. And the tip came that he had bodies and babies buried there from some of the girls that he had raped, which never happened. But, and and they were all buried under his golf course. And this all happened 10 years before he actually owned the golf course. So a lot of those, complaints, horrendous things that are said about Trump on the tip line, Biden's DOJ found them false, could not confirm, or found that they were not even credible. This wasn't Trump's DOJ. This was Biden's DOJ. Under Biden with the FBI. And there are times I wonder if Democrats actually think that when a Republican comes into office, anybody that works for the federal government that's not Republican is gone, fired, gotten rid of, furloughed for those 4 years. They think that everybody that works for the federal government is Republican during those years. I mean, I know that there are plenty of people that work during Democrat years in the federal government that are Republican. So, it just kind of makes you wonder where they get their information, how they come up with this thought process, or are they being fed that? It's just crazy. But, and I know that we never really talked about the story there in New Jersey, where there was a school bus that a rock was thrown through the window. It was thrown from an overpass, and it struck an 8-year-old girl who has had several surgeries around this. She almost lost her life due to this. But, the news never did this follow-up, and so I kind of got curious about what it was. If they ever found the guy, the person that they thought had thrown the rock, those kind of things. Yes, they did. An illegal alien. He's done this more than once, throwing rocks off the overpass at cars going by. Maybe he has a mental issue. And maybe not. However, I do know he's probably being deported. He's not already been deported. So, yeah. But there are a lot of stories I've seen that there's no follow-up, and when you go to find the follow-up, it's not exactly as they said it is. They had talked about the whole thing with Don Lemon, that the magistrate judge would not sign off because he didn't feel the government made their case. So basically what they told the government with that, this judge did, that if they felt there was enough evidence to arrest Don Lemon, they could go and get a grand jury to give an indictment, and that is exactly what happened. So, but I do, I just find it interesting that I'm seeing a lot of church that are talking about some of the different things that they're going to be using as they go forward to protect those people who come into the church to worship. So, we're seeing that. And a lot of this is because what happened Like I said yesterday, I saw someone that said that they were that they're a reporter, like Don Lemon. They have their own YouTube channel. They're an independent reporter. So, if that's allowed and Don Lemon is allowed to do that in church, then he will do the same thing at abortion clinics. Now, he did say that was tongue-in-cheek, but he thought if it's possible, if that's okay for Don Lemon to do, why isn't it okay for reporters to do that from inside an abortion clinic, to talk with the patients and staff? I wouldn't advocate for that, but I do understand the thought process, behind it. But we live in some crazy times, don't we? Some absolutely crazy times. So, I think we just have to be more aware of what's going on. And I think what's interesting is I've seen a couple of interviews. Saw an interview with someone in Minnesota that had been protesting against ICE, and he was shocked that he got arrested by the police for standing in the street. I mean, he was just protesting against ICE because of what had happened to Alex Preddy. I'm a nurse and I just felt the need to come down and do this. Well, that's because you're not protesting legally. You're allowed to do it on sidewalks, not in the middle of the road. Not allowed to throw frozen water bottles at people, throw bricks at them, like they did at the guy in the hotel who was actually someone from the prison system, not even an ICE officer, but had been pulled to protect the hotel from the so-called peaceful protesters who broke windows, came in and tore up the lobby, and then were throwing bricks at these officers that were there to guard the building. And I saw I think in Philadelphia, and I can't remember the guy that did it. He had posted the video where he had gone to one of the protests at Philly, and there were these people that were coming up to him, standing at him, told him he had to stand over there, he couldn't go over here, whatever. And he said, this is a public protest, public property. Like, I can go where I want. I can do this. Then they were trying to give him a hard time, and 4 of them surrounded him, trying to keep him from moving, to talk with people, just to ask them what they were doing there, what their views were, those kind of things. And he pointed out several of the laws that they weren't allowed to do what they were doing, and they were guilty of certain crimes. And one of them, you could see the look on his face, because he's beginning to realize this guy's spouting law. He's giving you the statute and code numbers and everything. And he was just following directions from his protest captains, or whatever they're called. You're not supposed to let these people through to talk to them if you suspect that they're somebody else. There was the story of the guys that worked for FFA, not FFA, aviation, basically TSA, who were out at dinner, and a lot of protesters started surrounding them, giving them harassment harassing them and giving them a lot of trouble because they thought they were ICE agents. So police came, protected them, helped them get out of the situation. And I'm like, they're just trying to eat dinner before they went back to work. This is where people are out of hand. You have a right to protest, but you do not have a right to act like Nazis with people who are just out trying to enjoy the evening or get a meal. If you don't want it, don't act like it. And I do think this is the problem I have. Biggest problem I have with those on the left is, using the word regime, because that paints a picture. And they are trying to paint a negative picture to make people hate this president, to detest him and everything else. They use a lot of words against him and anyone who voted for him or supports him, which, by the way, I think we should support our presidents, even if it's not the president we voted for. Now, that doesn't mean we have to like what they do. There's lots of things Trump's done that I don't care for. But, like I prayed for President Biden and his administration, and for the leaders of our country, I pray for our president. Current president, past president, their administrations, safety of our country, all of that. But, I think people are getting a little obnoxious. And one video that I had seen was this person trying to get through to their neighborhood, and there were people that were standing out there with yellow vests and not letting them through where they needed to go. And when someone asked them, "Are you police?" No. "What, has someone given you the authority to do this?" No. That, one of these days, someone's going to drive right through them. And people that are going to get hurt because of this kind of stupidity. So, anyway, those are my thoughts on that. But I think that's about all I'd looked at. Trying to think the other thing I saw. I cannot remember. It was news-wise. We already talked about the fact that they diverted another government shutdown for now. Doesn't mean it won't happen next week. I think the House has to meet, and they really need to meet next week in order to revisit whatever the bills were they were considering for funding the TSA and FEMA and all that kind of stuff. Because if they don't do a vote on it next week, Democrats can shut down the government again. I think the only other thing I've seen is, I think Nick Shirley. Is it Nick Shirley or was it the other guy? Nope, Nick Shirley has now landed in California to go doing some research into the fraud that is there. I think I saw something about Trump had been pushing to find out why so many of the houses there at Palisades have not gotten the permits to rebuild again. Some of it we know why, because Newsom is making some backdoor deals, selling property out from under these people, and all this other nonsense. But basically, Trump is trying to make it to where these insurance companies have to pay out for these homes that were lost due to this fire. Also, to make sure that there is water that is available for fighting fires. I mean, fires are normal in California. I mean, they're just normal, just like the mudslides. So you need to, consider doing things beforehand to take care of it. So anyway, Trump is trying to make sure that those people's the insurance have to pay out for their loss to their homes, so they can either move on with their lives or whatever. And he's actually trying to find out what is the problem with California not allowing these people, giving them the permits needed to rebuild. Some of that has to do with some of the crazier laws that they were trying to get passed. That you have to have this kind of bond to put it to rebuild your home, and some other things. And some of it's just nuts what they're trying to get passed. And it hurts the people that would like to get back into their neighborhoods, because they love their neighborhoods. So, I don't know. I guess we'll see next coming month what happens out of that. But I had someone ask me, are they still investigating the fraud that's in Minnesota? As far as I know and what I can research, yes, they are. And a lot of those people are seeking some kind of deal when they are found guilty of the fraud. Some deals are being given, some are not. Some of those deals that are not being given are because they won't reveal where they got the money from or the agency. So, and these are all NGOs that gave them those monies. So, anyway. All right, that's it for today. I'm going to go. And everybody have a great day, and try to stay warm in this cold weather. All right, guys. See you guys soon. Bye.